Two arrogant officers thought they were making a routine arrest. What they didn't realize was that the woman they just cuffed had been hunting them for months. The stretch of Highway 82 past Thomas, Alabama, was desolate. A lonely road lined with pine trees and old mailboxes leaning like tired men toward the asphalt. The sun had just dipped low enough to paint the sky a heavy orange, softening every edge into a blur. Tasha Ellison, 38, was driving home to Jackson, Mississippi after a weekend medical conference in Montgomery. Smooth jazz hummed low through her speakers. Her phone was on Do Not Disturb. She wasn't speeding. Her car was spotless. Seatbelt on. Windows up. A dozen times she'd driven this road, and nothing ever happened. So when the red and blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror, she didn't panic. She sighed. Mild annoyance. That was it. She eased onto the dirt shoulder, turned off the engine, and placed both hands on the wheel. Calm, collected, precise. A tall officer approached, hand already resting on his weapon. No greeting. License and registration. No eye contact, no warmth. She complied in silence. You traveling alone? Yes. Where from? Montgomery. Medical conference. What's in the trunk? Luggage, work materials. He tapped the roof of her car. Pop it. She hesitated just a second. Is there a reason? You got a problem? No. Her voice was still even. She pressed the trunk release. Another officer appeared. Heavier build, mirrored sunglasses, even in the fading light. They rummaged through her belongings like they were looking for something they already believed was there. Tasha watched them through the mirror. Something didn't feel right. Not the stop, the silence. The glances exchanged. The second officer kept checking if she was watching. The air between them was heavy, rehearsed. Then the first one returned. Step out of the vehicle. Excuse me? Now. She stepped out slowly. Can you tell me what's going on? We found a controlled substance in your bag. Cocaine. She blinked. No, you didn't. Officer Sharp, according to the name barely visible on his vest, moved behind her. Turn around, hands behind your back. I don't consent to this search, she said firmly, louder now. I'm not resisting, but you're making a mistake. The cold click of handcuffs answered her. I have no record. I work in pharmaceuticals. You can explain it to the judge, Officer Callan interrupted, walking her toward the squad car. They shoved her in the back without another word. Her breath grew shallow, but she didn't struggle. Not yet, because she knew something they didn't. Her real ID was hidden beneath the suitcase lining. Her encrypted burner phone, untouched since Thursday, was in the glove compartment, and she wasn't panicking. She was calculating. These men had no idea who they were arresting. The booking area reeked of bleach and old grease. Tasha sat quietly, hands cuffed, blazer wrinkled, her face unreadable. She gave her name and date of birth, nothing more. She was documenting everything, every insult, every glance, every unnecessary touch. They asked if she had tattoos. She didn't answer. They took her mugshot in silence, fingerprinted her like a criminal, stripped her of her dignity with cold, rehearsed motions. Squat, the female guard ordered. Tasha obeyed, emotionless. This wasn't the first time she'd been here. Not exactly. But that never made it easier. What always burned was how routine it all felt to the people doing it. They handed her a faded orange jumpsuit that barely fit. She put it on without a word. Back in the holding cell, 6 other women sat waiting. One, no older than 20, glanced at her. You knew? She asked. Tasha gave a small nod. Just passing through? The girl smirked. Aren't we all? Time moved strangely. Lights flickered overhead. A vending machine groaned in the hallway. But inside Tasha's mind, the gears kept turning. Roy Talbert, her handler, wasn't expecting contact until Monday. He thought she was gathering intel at the conference. He had no idea she was taking Highway 82, because she hadn't told him. She hadn't thought she'd need to. Now she regretted that. A black security dome in the corner of the cell caught her eye. Camera. Good. She started memorizing everything. Faces, badges, papers, angles. Around midnight, they took her for her initial appearance. No judge, just a cold desk, a metal chair, and a man with tired eyes. Ben Ridley, he said. Court appointed. You can call me Ben. He didn't offer hope, just facts. Possession with intent. It carries weight here, especially for someone not from around here. I didn't have drugs, she said flatly. Bagged, labeled, in your suitcase. They weren't mine. He didn't argue. He didn't believe her either. Back in the cell, a guard whispered something to his partner and laughed. Tasha didn't blink. They had no idea who she really was, and that made her dangerous. She wasn't just waiting to be released, she was waiting for their next mistake. This wasn't procedure. No lawyer, no paperwork, no court officer, just Callan and Sharp. You remember me? Sharp asked, arms crossed. Tasha didn't answer. Callan leaned casually against the desk, smirking. We had a little more time to search your things last night, he said. Guess what we found? She stayed silent. He held up the burner phone. Care to explain this? That's personal property, she said. And you don't have a warrant. Callan chuckled. You're not exactly in a position to flex legal terms. You got caught with coke. You planted it. Sharp flinched, just slightly. Callan kept grinning. Careful, he said. You're lucky we didn't add obstruction or resisting. I didn't resist. You didn't smile either. Callan winked. Sharp stepped forward, eyes narrowed. You've got an attitude. You think you're smarter than us. Tasha tilted her head. I know I am. Sharp moved fast, hand twitching toward her, but Callan stopped him with a glance. Not here. The room hung in silence. Tasha looked between them, voice low. Let me guess. You two pull long shifts, seize just enough drugs to log, keep the rest for leverage or profit, target out-of-town drivers looking for the next easy stash. Neither of them responded. You weren't expecting someone like me. Oh yeah, Callan said, feigning amusement. What's someone like you? Someone who knows the chain of custody, someone who knows your precinct's already flagged by internal affairs, 3 times. Someone whose real name, if spoken aloud, would have you both under federal review by sundown. Callan's smirk faded. Sharp's jaw clenched. You've got a mouth, Sharp muttered. You've got a badge you don't deserve. Callan stepped forward now, menace in his voice. Careful. We can add threats to your charges. You already lied once, Tasha said evenly. Why stop now? He glared at her, then turned to Sharp. Put the phone in the box. She's going to court in an hour. As they walked her back to holding, another officer passed them in the hallway, young, alert. His name tag read Rise. He didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on her face a second too long. There was doubt in his expression. The first crack. Back in her cell, Tasha ignored the tray of lukewarm oatmeal and sat still. Her mind worked like a machine. Callan and Sharp weren't just dirty, they were reckless. And now they were on record. The burner phone was secure. It hadn't been activated. It required her fingerprint and a multi-step code only she and Roy Tolbert knew. Buying her time. They were digging their own trap deeper with every move. 5 years earlier, she'd sat in a cafe off B Street in Memphis, sipping stale coffee, pretending to read a travel magazine. She wasn't there for the music or the food. She was watching Derek Vaughn, ex-corrections officer turned suspected supplier, part of a meth pipeline running through West Tennessee. Her name that day wasn't Tasha, it was Latrice Monroe, a college dropout with 3 sealed arrests and a boyfriend doing time in Parchman, a role she wore like a second skin. Real DEA work wasn't shootouts. It was stillness, patience, camouflage. By 30, she was known inside the agency as a ghost, someone who could disappear in plain sight. That made her deadly. Her current assignment started 11 months ago, sparked by a quiet anomaly, missing drug evidence in rural counties, cases that vanished, property never returned, just whispers. Roy Talbert called her in over breakfast tacos. I need someone who doesn't look like a Fed, he said. You mean a black woman in heels? She asked, eyebrow raised. I mean someone who scares them because she's not scared. She'd built her cover fast, a pharmaceutical consultant, traveling the South, just visible enough to raise interest. She'd already made contact with 2 informants, a fired field officer from Marengo County and a former pharmacy tech out of Starkville. Both told the same story, small-town deputies stealing evidence and flipping it for cash or silence. She hadn't expected to land this close to the source so soon, but when Callan and Sharp pulled her over, she recognized Callan's name immediately, buried deep in sealed reports. Now they'd walked right into her investigation. Back in the holding cell, she leaned her head against the cool cinder block. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Never yell when you can whisper and still be heard. It had become her creed. And now, in a nowhere-town jail full of overconfident men, she had exactly what she needed. Names, behavior patterns, body cam footage that may or may not exist. If that footage was accidentally disabled, it would raise more flags than any evidence could. She just had to wait. Talbert would find her. Missing a Monday check-in was enough to spark a flare. Let them keep digging. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Pale walls, warped portraits, ceiling fans that clicked and groaned. No press, no audience. Just bored clerks, a yawning bailiff, and Judge Ronald Beckwith. Gray-haired, bathrobe aura, clearly annoyed he'd been dragged out of bed. Tasha was led in shackled wrist to ankle, orange jumpsuit loose around her frame. Every chain rattle echoed. She sat beside Ben Ridley, the public defender who hadn't looked her in the eye once that morning. Across the aisle stood Sharp and Callan, pressed, polished, posturing. Sharp smirked. Callan adjusted his collar like a man about to give a toast. They thought they were winning. They had no idea. Judge Beckwith cleared his throat. Let's move this along. The clerk stood, monotone and mechanical. Charges: possession with intent to distribute, suspicious electronic devices, refusal to cooperate. Tasha remained still, her face unreadable. But inside, her jaw tightened. It was all fiction. Carefully crafted lies, stitched together with just enough truth to pass inspection. Officer Callan took the stand first. The vehicle was driving erratically. Sudden lane shift, no signal. The driver appeared evasive when questioned. I asked her to step out. Found a large quantity of suspected narcotics in the trunk, wrapped and concealed. Any resistance? Beckwith asked. Callan shook his head. Minimal. She tried to argue, claimed ignorance. And the second phone? She said it was private, no explanation. Across the defense table, Ben Ridley was half listening, scrawling lazy loops across his legal pad. More art than legal strategy. Thank you, Officer Callan, the judge said. Sharp followed. His voice was smooth, too smooth, rehearsed. He stared forward the whole time, never once looking at Tasha. That alone said enough. Even liars flinch around the truth. He testified that the substance tested positive, that the second phone was encrypted far beyond civilian necessity, and that the suspect refused to disclose her employer. Judge Beckwith folded his hands. Textbook courier, he muttered. Bail is denied. She'll be remanded until... Your Honor. The voice came from the rear of the courtroom. Heads turned. A man in a charcoal suit stood just inside the doors, silver at the temples, a black folder in hand. His tone was even, but unmistakably firm. My name is Special Agent Roy Talbert, DEA. I need to speak with you. In chambers. Beckwith blinked. Excuse me? Talbert approached, calm as ever, and handed the judge a document. That's a sealed federal file. You'll want to read it off the record. Callan shifted in his seat. Sharp's eyes narrowed. Ridley finally turned toward Tasha, looking like he just remembered who she was. Judge Beckwith read the first few lines, then looked up slowly. Court is in recess. 5 minutes. Everyone out, except Agent Talbert and Ms. Ellison. The bailiff moved without a word, unlocking Tasha's shackles. She stood and followed Talbert past the stunned courtroom. Behind her, Sharp whispered, What the hell is going on? Callan didn't answer. Whatever illusion of control they had, it had just vanished in a charcoal suit. Inside Judge Beckwith's chambers, the air was heavier. The blinds were drawn. The lamp on his desk buzzed faintly, casting long shadows over the dark wood. Tasha stood silently as Talbert spread out documents across the desk, neatly, deliberately. What you're looking at, Talbert said, is a DOJ clearance, 2 sealed warrants out of the Middle District of Alabama, and a full briefing on Operation Gay Cut. The judge flipped through the stack, his frown deepening with each page. Ms. Ellison, Talbert continued, is not a courier. She's a federally embedded DEA agent who's been undercover for 11 months. Her assignment? Investigate corruption tied to narcotics theft within regional law enforcement. Beckwith leaned back in his chair, still holding one of the forms. These are serious accusations. They're not accusations, Talbert said, sliding a flash drive across the desk. They're confirmed. That drive contains body cam footage from last night, pulled directly from precinct storage, before anyone could scrub it. He looked the judge squarely in the eye. You'll see Callan passing off a bag from his own jacket. You'll hear Sharp mention a burner phone before it was ever found in Miss Ellison's vehicle. Combine that with GPS logs and intercepted comms, we're looking at a clear frame job. Tasha finally spoke, voice even. Your Honor, I've been tracking these two since March. They target travelers, mostly women, mostly alone. They manufacture or lose evidence. Until last night, we didn't have footage. Now we do. Beckwith rubbed his face, weariness cutting through the formality. I've been on this bench 22 years, he said quietly. I don't like being made a fool. You're not the only one, Talbert said. He tapped the folder. They've been feeding you bad cases for months. It's rot, plain and simple. The judge exhaled. What do you want from me? Dismiss the charges, Talbert said. Now. Then hold Callan and Sharp here until arrest orders are filed. We'll transfer jurisdiction to federal court within the hour. Beckwith gave a slow nod, then stood. Back in the courtroom, the door creaked open, and Judge Beckwith returned to the bench. Tasha followed beside Talbert. Callan and Sharp were on their feet, arms crossed, masks of composure starting to crack. Ridley looked dazed, lips parted like he'd forgotten how to speak. Beckwith didn't look at the officers. He didn't need to. After reviewing new evidence submitted by federal authorities, he said, voice flat and cold, all charges against Miss Ellison are hereby dismissed, effective immediately. Callan flinched. Sharp took a step forward. Wait, what? You two, the judge interrupted, not even raising his voice, will remain in this courthouse under supervision, until instructed otherwise. No one moved, no one spoke. Tasha didn't smile. She didn't need to. They'd buried themselves. All she had to do now was write the report. I don't think you understand, Callan said, voice rising. She had coke in the... Enough, Judge Beckwith cut in. The gavel cracked against the bench. Court is adjourned. Silence followed, sharp, final. Tasha didn't look at either man as she walked past them. Talbert followed close behind, his voice low and even. We're pulling data from the precinct server. Subpoenas are out for their text records. If even half of what's in there matches our informant's accounts, they're done. In the hallway, Talbert slowed his pace. Glad you kept your cool, he said. Tasha didn't answer at first. She looked down at the loose cuffs still dangling from her wrist, then back toward the courtroom door. They thought I was just another woman with the wrong car and the wrong story. And now, Talbert said, they're just two men with the wrong job and the wrong future. But Tasha wasn't thinking about them anymore. Her focus had already shifted to what came next. Outside, the sunlight was harsher now, casting sharp shadows over the courthouse steps. Two federal agents waited near an unmarked black SUV. One handed Talbert a folder. Pulled the logs like you asked, the agent said. You were right. Callan accessed the evidence room 7 times last month, twice on days he wasn't even scheduled. Tasha flipped through the file, cross-checking timestamps with the case notes she'd been building for months. Sharp's name popped up too, linked to a bus near Meridian. The drugs were listed as marked for destruction, but they were never logged as destroyed. They built a system, she muttered. Used the badge like a skeleton key. Steal, resell, cover it up with planted evidence and soft targets. Pressure the accused into pleas. Clean exits. No paper trail. Talbert nodded grimly. And it's not just them. Same reports are surfacing out of Choctaw and Lowndes counties. Same signs. Same silence. Inside the courthouse, Callan and Sharp were being questioned separately. A federal tech had already slipped into a side room, syncing Callan's body cam files onto a forensic laptop. Tasha didn't need to guess what they'd find. Back in the SUV, she reached for the sealed evidence bag and pulled out her burner phone. Encrypted, untouched. They tried to plant it like a smoking gun, she said. Didn't even know what it really was. Talbert glanced over. You want to call it in? She shook her head. Not yet. I want to go through it myself first. Carefully. He didn't push. He understood. This wasn't just work anymore. They drove down to a secure federal field office on the outskirts of Demopolis. A small task force had been posted there for weeks, quietly gathering intel from locals. Inside, past 2 layers of security and a thick steel door, Tasha finally sat down at a real desk. The room was filled with whiteboards, case charts, pinned mugshots, and timelines. At the center stood a corkboard with red string connecting officers to dealers, dealers to missing evidence to vanishing plea deals. Tasha's name wasn't up there. She preferred it that way. Talbert watched as she cross-checked phone logs from Callan's seized device, freshly subpoenaed, against old GPS data. Dozens of calls to a familiar name. Elijah Burks, alias Ghost, a known supplier linked to Mobile and Pensacola. There it was, the link. Not just theft or intimidation. This was organized trafficking, crossing state lines. He's cooked, Talbert said. He cooked himself, Tasha replied. A junior analyst entered with 2 folders. Prelim interview from one of the women they arrested last month. Her story lines up. Same routine. Coerced search, no warrant, threats. Tasha took the file and read it in silence. Then she exhaled, long and slow. They weren't just abusing their power, she said. They were hiding behind it. And they would have kept going if I hadn't gotten pulled over. Talbert folded his arms. They messed with the wrong woman. Tasha gave a faint nod, eyes still on the page. I don't just want prosecution. I want every case they touched reopened. Every person they silenced deserves better. He didn't argue. Outside, the sun was dipping low, spilling gold across the lot. Tasha stood by the door, watching the horizon for a long moment. This had never really been about just Callan and Sharp. Not to her. Because when power goes unchecked long enough, silence stops being an option. And eventually, someone always fights back. 3 weeks later, Tasha Ellison stood on the steps of the same courthouse where she'd once been paraded in chains. No cuffs now, no jumpsuit, just a navy suit and a calm, unshaken gaze. She wasn't there to testify. That part was done. Callan and Sharp had been indicted, multiple federal counts, evidence tampering, civil rights violations, conspiracy to distribute, obstruction of justice. The courtroom had been packed the day the charges were read. Reporters scribbling, families whispering, defense attorneys drowning in paperwork. Now the 2 men sat in separate federal holding facilities, isolated and stripped of authority. The press called them dirty cops. But to Tasha, that label felt too light, too neat. What they did had weight, and now finally it would have consequences. It ruined lives. Some of those lives were still behind bars, people without a badge in their suitcase, or a team of agents watching their backs. People who didn't get a second look, let alone a second chance. Outside the courthouse, a group of high school students waited for their civics field trip to begin. One girl, black, maybe 15 or 16, caught sight of Tasha as she passed. She leaned in, whispered to her friend, who turned to look too. Tasha didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She met the girl's eyes, held the gaze, and gave a quiet nod. One that said, I see you. Not pity, not pride, just recognition from someone who had walked through fire and come out not colder, but clearer. Back in Jackson, she stepped into her apartment for the first time in weeks. The lights still ran on timers. Her plants were somehow alive. The suitcase she'd carried that night, the night everything changed, was still sitting in the hallway, untouched. She opened it slowly. Inside was the blazer she wore during the arrest, neatly folded over the edge like a ghost waiting to be remembered. She ran a hand along the sleeve, then tossed it into a plastic bin labeled evidence. Not for court, for herself. The next morning she called Talbert. I'm taking 2 weeks, she said. You've earned 6. I'll settle for 2, then I'm back in. He didn't argue. Tasha didn't take time off because she needed rest. She took it because she needed perspective. The work would still be there, but she had to face it with a steady mind and clear eyes. No emotion, just facts. Still, the truth lingered. She had almost been erased. 1 traffic stop, 2 dirty cops, a planted bag. That could have been it. No trial, no headlines. Just another woman swallowed by the system, silenced before anyone even thought to listen. That reality never left her. She spent a day visiting 3 women whose charges had been dropped in the wake of her case. One, a mother of 4, wept for 10 minutes before she could even say thank you. Another had spent 9 months in a state facility, falsely accused, forgotten by the system that had failed her. Tasha handed her a sealed envelope, contacts for legal aid, housing support, someone who'd walk with her through the next chapter. Because justice wasn't just indictments and court dates, it was restoration. It was giving people back what had been stolen, from their lives, from their dignity. Later that night, Tasha sat on her back porch with a mug of tea, eyes casually tracing the quiet street ahead. The neighborhood wasn't silent, but it was still, a kind of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. People will size you up before you say a word, but when they find out who you really are, make sure it humbles them. That was the lesson. Not vengeance, not outrage. Truth, cold, clear, necessary. She no longer needed to prove anything. Not to them, not to herself. The truth had already done that, because power only intimidates when you forget your own. And sometimes the strongest weapon you have is patience. If you're reading this, remember, don't assume, don't back down. And if someone ever tries to write your story for you, grab the pen, finish it yourself.